And the only thing I'm taking away from this is Uncle Ringo's.
I love
Now,
Uncle
there's a corporation that should be investing
Thank you.
in football. Geylang United, Uncle Ringo's. Let's go.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Yahoo Footballing Weekly, where we get stuck into all things Singapore and Asian football. Right. With me, Yahoo columnist Neil Humphreys.
And me, Yahoo editor Chan Kiong, and we have back to us, James Walton. He's a long designation.
I have a very long title, sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, he's basically at Deloitte.
Asia Pacific Sports Business Group Leader for Deloitte.
That one.
Yeah. There you go. And one of the key sponsors for Singapore sports and has been for many, many years. You didn't pay me to say that, did you?
No. I paid them for you to say that.
But somebody's paying us to say something, isn't it?
Yes. Our lovely friends at StarHub. Thanks to you, week on week, building our platform across all social media outlets.
Thank you very much.
We do appreciate it. It's why we have StarHub.
Yep. So, they are Premier League official broadcaster, and they're going to do a free live screening of the big match between Liverpool and Everton, Merseyside derby.
Big match.
That'll be on the 21st of October. And they're going to show you live outside Capital Singapore's outdoor plaza. That's the one opposite City Hall MRT station. So invite your friends. Come over, have a good time. Got fun and games.
From 6:30, right?
Yeah, from 6:30 onwards.
21st of October.
21st of October.
Are we going down? We might. You might see us there as well.
You might see us there. You never know.
You might see us there. And that'll be nice because we want to thank you again, as always. The post box, the mailbox is full. This poor man goes through every comment on, where is it now? Instagram, Twitter,
Facebook, YouTube, TikTok.
I told you, right? Yeah. I told you, my daughter's friend plays for the Lion City Sailors youth team. And you and I, my friend, and James, but you and I, we're like cult heroes now with these boys. They're listening, man. It's TikTok. It's all on the TikTok. So thank you as always for the comments. We do appreciate them. What have we got first?
Okay, so first comment. This is a good one from Nick9192. It's funny how one of Singapore's richest billionaires owns a Spanish La Liga team, claiming to be a huge football lover, and even has close ties with Jorge Mendes and Cristiano Ronaldo, CR7, and yet doesn't invest in any SPL team. That's why I actually respect Forrest Lee for investing so much into Lion City Sailors. Wow.
I'll go first on this. Yeah. Okay, Peter Lim. He's talking about Peter Lim. He doesn't mention him, obviously, but he's talking about Peter Lim. Peter Lim is a self-made billionaire.
Yeah.
He's not paying me to say this. I don't know Peter Lim. I've only ever met him once briefly. As a self-made billionaire, he has no obligation to spend his money anywhere. He can spend it wherever he likes.
Yeah.
He does do the Peter Lim Scholarship, which puts a lot of interest and money into grassroots. I've always loved the fact that he takes Cristiano Ronaldo and others to neighborhood schools in Singapore. He's a neighborhood school kid himself, as was I, as was you. So I always admire that about Peter Lim. But the second point I want to make about the Peter Lim thing is, why do we always insist that it has to be these benevolent individuals that must ride to the rescue of local sport? Like it's some sort of Victorian Oliver Twist. Please, sir, can I have some more, please?
Obligation to a society that made you wealthy.
National service.
Yes, I'll come back to that. But that's an individualistic approach, a very old-fashioned Victorian patriarchal viewpoint. I'm not saying it's not valid. When we have got surrounding us right now in Robinson Road, these government-linked companies that James refers to, with a much bigger pot than any one individual. I'm not saying wealthy individuals can't contribute. Come one, come all. We'll reject nobody's money. But we have government-linked companies, prominent companies in Singapore, who you would think were obligated to give something back and to build their community engagement from the bottom up. What do you think?
Yeah. And another thing, I mean, I take your point and I agree totally. But also I feel that football clubs cannot stay sit there and just take the money, waiting for money to come. The basis of grassroots engagement must start from them. And somewhere maybe along the line, there might be a small kid who grew up watching Tanjong Pagar, who grew up watching Woodlands Wellington or Geylang International. The seed starts from there. And eventually, if they become a successful businessman, and if Geylang still survives, then they say, okay, why don't I come back and, this is my childhood club. I spend good times there. I'll put my money there. And then that's where the club gets all the benefits of their grassroots engagement. But if you don't do it, if clubs don't do it, then nobody's gonna like suddenly comes. They're gonna wait for somebody to come and just splash the cash like Forest Lee. It's not gonna happen that often.
You have to sit there and say, so why would somebody buy a football team, right? When you look around the world, not just Singapore, you look around the world, there's a couple of reasons, right? One is an economic motive. There's no economic motive with Singapore football, I'll tell you that right now. But for example, that's why some people do buy into European teams, and you only have to look at the Glazers in terms of how much they put in versus how much they're likely to get out when they eventually sell to see that can work. But let's take that one off the table from a Singapore point of view. Another reason could be, it is the good of my heart, I'm giving back, it's goodwill. It's great if those people do it, but to your point earlier, you're not obligated to do it, but if somebody wants to, right? Another reason can be for the side benefits, the standing it brings, or business connections. So are you doing it to advance your business interests? Are you doing it to advance political connections? And there's been some owners, some may have already been mentioned in this conversation, where that has been listed as one of the reasons why perhaps they have done that, is to advance their other interests. And it can be about personal connections and being in the box and those kind of things, but it can be about branding of your organization and how you're doing that. But you'll be hard pressed to find many people who own a football team who do not fit into one of those constructs, with the occasional exception of people that are doing it because of political motivations, right? And then you sit there and you say, so if Singapore doesn't offer the first one, then to your point, you even need somebody, a wealthy billionaire, right, to come in and to come in and do that, either out of goodwill or out of business sense. Well, how many of them do we really have that are in that profile or in that demographic are going to think that way? Or your other option is you look at Indonesia, Japan, you look at other places, and you look at the corporate model. There's only so many things you can do. If you really don't want it to be fully state government subsidized, there are only so many things that you can do.
Yeah, no, I agree. What do you think? Should we be encouraging our wealthy billionaires to invest, or should we be looking at companies? Send all your comments to
Yahoo Southeast Asia on YouTube, Yahoo SG, Yahoo_NY on Twitter, Yahoo SEA on TikTok.
But the second point that Nick made, I like a lot.
So there's the second point he made. On a side note, I really agree with the tribalism part and how it will connect the fans closer to the various teams. Singaporeans are a tribal bunch. Look at how many people still proudly proclaiming they are from a specific NS unit 30 years after they ORD, or how many people still have car decals of their junior colleges. If we can somehow tap into that, I'm sure Singapore football can move in the right direction. I agree with him. Some of the people still bragging that, they are from HQ, 3rd Brigade, 6th Division, 9th Unit, or whatever it is.
It didn't keep the Safra team going, or Warriors, did it though? So I don't know. Maybe we need to have commandos as a team.
Maybe beer or alcohol things that will get them together or whatever.
No, you're right. The best is yet to be. All that stuff. We've heard it all. But there is something in that. There is something about the tribalism of Singapore that is ingrained from a very early age, very deliberately. Cynics may say politically, but it is. I've been to more than 100 schools, as I've said before, and you see it in the school assemblies, the school pledge, and then the school song, and then sometimes there's a school motto and so on. And it's ingrained, this tribalism, from such an early age. And then for the men, of course, it's extended into national service as part of a grander
JC,
exactly, as part of a grander national project of us togetherness, working for this small, wonderful project called Singapore. And you do see it manifest in other ways, which we have discussed. I am Liverpool. My father is Liverpool. My son is Liverpool. And I am Man U and my son is Man U. They take that tribalism that's been nurtured from kindergarten and they take it into their EPL affiliations. If we could somehow direct that towards local football, answers on a postcard, we'd be unstoppable.
So there's a common argument on this that's made, is that it's very difficult to have tribalism when, number one, you're basically all living in one tiny little town, right? But no, you have tribalism in London.
I've never bought that argument for that reason.
Right? There's an argument that says that it's difficult to have tribalism when the teams come and go. That this team comes up, it goes, this team comes up, it goes. But there are still teams that have been around for a long time. And there's an argument it's difficult to have tribalism when you don't have a home stadium or a home turf and you're getting moved around. But to your point, that tribalism that exists for Singapore, Manchester United fans All of those
Everywhere.
things I've just said.
Doesn't
Many have never been to Old Trafford.
You've
They've
never been to Old
England.
Trafford. You don't care whether or not they've got a stadium. The fact that they're closer to anyone else, they couldn't even. Most Man United fans couldn't find Salford on a map or Trafford or anything.
Nor could I,
Manchester or
actually.
anything
And I
else, right?
studied there.
Yeah, I mean, so those same things that we say are factors that stop tribalism here. To your point, don't stop tribalism in other areas.
But I do see a little bit of tribalism happening. I mean, it's not big, but some major SPL games like Albirex versus
Tampines, the East Coast
Sailors and
Derby
or the Tampines sides. Even Hougang for that matter.
Yeah.
There's a small group who are a bit more vocal about their affiliation.
Yeah.
I think it's germinating, but obviously it needs something to keep boosting them, and that maybe Sailors keep winning and keep entering the AFC Champions League. Maybe that could get the thing going.
We had it. I mean, I know I'm a broken record on this, but when the then home United used to play the Warriors, it was unbelievable tribalism.
Yeah.
And then when they played Tanjong Pagar or Tampines, the so-called neighbourhood teams up against the big boys, you had it then as well. It was all squandered, of course, with the Lions 12 project, which was a completely regressive step that we should have never have taken because it squandered that tribalism and focused it into one small, narrow national project that was very short term. And then we splintered and it all fragmented, and now we're trying to rebuild it again. But I agree. I do think that tribalism is a part of our culture, and if we could tap into it, great. Okay, got another one. Speaking of tribalism, the Thai League.
Yeah.
A long one about the Thai
Mr.
League, which I like a lot.
User saying, adding on to Hatta's as of last week's guest, his carnival idea. I watched a Thai League 1 game in Bangkok, Bangkok United versus BG Pathum. Tickets were 100 baht for home and 150 baht for away fans. That's about $5, $6 Singapore. Yeah, around there. 30 or 40% off for university students. It was held at a stadium 1 hour car ride away from Bangkok city centre in a 25,000 university stadium. There were pasar malam food stalls outside the stadium. They set up tables and chairs for people to eat. The club sold merchandise via a tentage setup. The speakers were blasting Bangkok United Club's song. All in all, the fan experience was wonderful. You can have dinner outside the stadium or bring in food brought from outside the stadium easily.
Ooh, I'll do that in Singapore.
The match drew in a diverse crowd on a Monday night, and it seemed like a legitimately good date night idea. In fact, I did see a lot of young people going into the single or group dates. I don't see why Singapore cannot implement such a common sense idea. If it is a permit issue, surely the government can loosen such things.
I agree. There's nothing to disagree with there. And just to add to it, yes, I've seen something very similar in the J-League. When I went and watched a couple of games in Japan, part of their 100-year plan is to nurture grassroots from the ground up. I do not know why we don't do this. Look, we know the reason. It's money, right? It's not going to make money.
It's also effort, I think.
And effort. So could we not pick a game a week, the game of the week, and play it at Jalan Besar and get the vendors in and accept that they might have to be subsidised either by the FAS or Active SG. We can argue about the stakeholders later. Get them in. Get your local Uncle Ringo to come down and put up a few little rides for the little kiddies, right?
You can do Pasar Malam so easily and so many.
They've got them right now.
Just bring them over. Yeah.
They've got a little Uncle Ringo's right now outside the new shopping mall near me, the Sengkang Grand. And I'm sure CapitaLand, whoever owns the mall, I can't remember, is paying for it. Well, if you can do it there, have a little Uncle Ringo's outside, set up your
since
stalls.
we only have about 3 or 4 stadiums in use right now because the rest are doing renovation, have 1 month in one stadium, 1 month in another stadium, 1 month in another stadium.
Anything. I'm open to anything. But I can't see, James, why Singapore, where we can organise any CDC event, any community event at the drop of a hat, while we can't have a designated game of the week or game of the month where it's a carnival. Rides, food, even have a pasar malam there, an actual pasar malam that sells clothes and everything else at the nearest void deck. I don't care, but anything that brings the community together.
And the only thing I'm taking away from this is Uncle Ringo's.
Now,
there's a corporation that should be investing
Thank you.
in football. Geylang United, Uncle Ringo's. Let's go.
There you go.
Let's go.
Let's make it happen. Carnival atmosphere. I'm all for it. Anything. It works for the J-League. It's good enough for us. What do we got next?
So next one, we got like a script from a fan.
Oh.
Yeah. Sunny Ang 6464. Interesting anecdote on the money-mindedness of a Singapore football fan. So this football fan from country A. Hey guys, I'm finally back from my World Cup trip. Football fan from country B will say, oh, hey, hope you had a great time. How was the football action? Did you manage to take a photo with any players? You meet any football friends over there? Whereas Singapore football fans will say, wow, you went there to watch the World Cup. Must be very expensive. How much were the tickets? Were the hotel and food that expensive? How much do you spend altogether?
Hear it all the time.
You hear it all the time.
Hear it all the time. It's what we said last week, right?
Yeah.
Why do we have to always prioritize money? Why is it always our default position?
When you want to go to a World Cup, it's not about the money anymore. You prepare, you save up for it, and when you go, you have a good time, meet all your friends, dress up in your favorite jerseys. It's not about like, I got to spend how much anymore, isn't it?
This actually happened. You've just reminded me. This actually happened to a friend of mine. She was an intern on a radio show that I did, right? And she was Vietnamese. And this is an unbelievable story. So just before the World Cup in Qatar, she says, I need to take a few weeks unpaid leave. We said, why? She said, I'm going to the Qatar World Cup. We said, what? She'd never shown an interest or mentioned football before. Very quiet Vietnamese girl. She said, oh yeah, my dad used to play for the Vietnamese national team. She'd never told us this. She'd never thought to mention it. We'd been looking to try and get Singaporeans who were going to the World Cup. And we've got a girl in our studio. And we said, that's amazing. She was going to see 3 or 4 games. And when I told Singaporeans this story, the first thing they said was, wow, how much is she paying? That was the first
How can
question.
an intern afford this?
Asked. Look, do you know this? She had saved for 2 years.
There you go.
And the money didn't mean anything to her. It was, I need to save this much to do this once in a lifetime thing. That's all I'm interested in.
So that's the only good thing about a 4-year World Cup. You can save up 4 years for the next World Cup, you see.
We need to change this, James.
Meanwhile, the Singaporeans sat there going, wow, I cannot renovate my HDB. I want to flip it.
My car, I'm going to sell my car. I can't buy a car anymore. You know?
Oh, it's funny. But it ties in nicely with the point that you wanted to bring up about, we got a lot of conversation, a lot of online debate last week about our comments about Patam's sponsorship in local football with Tampines.
So a lot of online fans were saying, why is it a foreign team coming in to sponsor? And then we are saying that, no, as long as it's money, why should we reject it? You know, and it's like, it's not like Bangkok Glass, which sponsors BT Patum, is an unknown entity. It's been sponsoring the Thai teams for years, and it has been a very very, very good supporter of football around this region.
And my point was, beggars can't be choosers. We haven't got Singaporeans knocking our door down to sponsor it, so why are we going to turn away Bangkok money?
The interesting thing as well is you have this concept nowadays, all else around the world, of this concept of super clubs and this idea that Manchester City and Melbourne and all this. And here you've got a Thai team, in effect, trying to do something a little bit similar. I mean, look, I'm not sure how this is going to play out in terms of money and other things, but SPL, they're asking for privatization. They're looking for privatization. But Desmond came out with some great comments around the opportunities that will provide in terms of learning experiences, exchanges of staff, exchanges of players, training tours and things like that will up the game in a way that we currently can't access as a Singapore team in our current situation. I take my hat off to Desmond for that.
It's a great opportunity to uplift the Singapore. But we also got an email from one of our long-time supporters, Lingesh Kumar. He has been sending a lot of comments and to us, and then he was asking a question about FAS. I mean their budget things. Although there's some, it eventually turns out that the budget, the statement in their annual report is a bit misleading because it was financial year. So. March 2022 to March 2023. So
it doesn't follow the season.
So the year of 2022, the budget the income gate receipts will definitely be more. But from there, you can see that most of what the income for FAS and for that matter Singapore Premier League clubs are from subsidies, seed money from the government, about 20. From Singapore Pools, actually.
Singapore Pools, Sport SG.
So about 20 million around there. The operating cost for Singapore Premier League is about 17 million. And budget and sponsorship budget, well, that's the alarming part. It's maybe about 2 million only. 2
And
million.
that includes in-kind sponsorship.
And that's for the whole league.
Yeah, that's for the whole league.
No, that was for the whole of FAS.
Yeah, for
everything,
correct.
right? So that includes women's football, that includes national team. So that includes your AIA, that includes any sponsors of match balls and kit, Nike, things like that is all in there.
I can remember the early days of the S League, just for a bit of comparison, 96 to late 90s, you'd be looking at $600,000-700,000 to $1 million per club in sponsorship back then.
So Lingesh was asking.
But there are some clubs with decent amounts.
Yeah. So Lingesh was asking, is this a problem? It's like, it's the sponsorship is really drips. The sponsoring in drips, and whether that could be, what does it mean for Singapore football?
Well, you're the man to answer that, James. I mean, let me ask you this, a bit of a blunt question. Whose responsibility is it to attract sponsors for the clubs? It sounds like an obvious question, but where should we be looking here? Whose responsibility is it, and why are we not getting the sponsors? Why is there so much pushback or reluctance to come in?
So you can put this in Premier League terms. You can think about it the same as the English Premier League, right? The English Premier League has the responsibility to find a sponsor for the league and to do other things, TV rights, other things like that, right? They also have a responsibility to raise the profile and the branding of the league internationally to make it more attractive for people to sponsor the clubs. And that's what means that, teams like Luton can get an international sponsor because of the fact, why does Aston Villa have sponsors from China and anywhere else? Is because of the work the EPL has done more than what Aston Villa has done. But then the clubs, it's their job once the fish is in the boat to the club to fish, right? Their job is to use their marketing, go out there, attract, sell the specific demographics of their fan base, their history, their values, what they stand for. And I can tell you, having worked with a lot of Premier League teams, they can tell you we have this many supporters in this country of this profile, of this income band, of this age, of this sex, everything. The average job is this. They can tell you all that to the nth degree of detail, which social media platforms they use and everything. So to put this in a Singapore context, it's Football Association's job to find sponsors for the league, for the national team, for the in-kinds and all those kind of things that you need, number one. And number two, it's their job to help raise the profile of SPL, sell the TV rights, get international, whatever you need to do, and to have success and that branding that makes it easier for a Balestier Khalsa or a Geylang or someone else to go out and get a sponsor. But at the end of the day, it's Balestier Khalsa's job to go get Jeep and get Jeep in the door or whatever, right? There's an interesting dynamic in Singapore sports sometimes, which is because we are so heavily subsidized. I get this with a lot of national sports associations when I talk to them. I say, okay, Singapore government giving you, 4 million for your sport. What are you doing about getting sponsors? And sometimes the NSAs will literally say to me, why? Get sponsors. Why not? Because if I get sponsor, government will give me less. And Sports Singapore goes to great lengths, and Football Association do as well, to be fair with the clubs, to say to them, no, we'll give you the funding no matter what. So if you can bring in more sponsors, it's more money for you. But people don't believe that. They sit there and they kind of go, no, when push comes to shove. And so there's some reassurances that need to be done around that. But at the end of the day, the clubs have to do it. But look, I full disclosure, we're the auditor. Those numbers came from us. I sit on the Unleash the Raw committee. I sit on the women's football committee, and I was at the, Congress when Bernard said that, and I've heard him say similar things in other places. And he did say one thing that I'm sorry, Bernard, you said one thing that I think we need to talk about, which is, as Bernard said a line that he talks to a lot of organizations, and they say that football is not in their branding strategy. I can tell you, football is not in Deloitte's branding strategy. Categorically, football is not in Deloitte's branding strategy. What is in our branding strategy is grassroots, youth, women, diversity, the values of sport, community building in Singapore. That is in my branding strategy. And if I can find that with football, I will give my money to football. Equally, if I can find that money with the arts, Singapore Repertory Theatre, as we do. Yep. If I can find that money through community projects and things like that, working with Meta or anything like that, I will find it through those channels. And what we need to do a better job of, FAS, the clubs, the football community as a whole, is extolling the virtues of football, pointing to the fact that this is the number one participation sport still in Singapore, the number one watched sport in Singapore, that it is grassroots, that it's in all the schools, that it's in all these private academies, that it's the one thing that can make the nation stop and hold their breath. We need to tell those stories better.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Couldn't agree more with that. So the onus is on FAS and the clubs basically to sell themselves better.
The whole ecosystem has to lift, but the clubs have to be out there and be active, and Football Association has to continue to work to build that brand. And they have made some steps. They've put in effort, but I honestly think they don't have a huge team. They don't have a lot of people. They have limited resources. It's true. Bernard is right on that. And sometimes when you have limited resources and you've got a football team going here and a youth academy set up over here and Unleash the Roar asking you to do this and the women's PL and the women's national league is starting, sometimes the marketing and that going out and finding sponsors isn't always the first thing that happens, unfortunately.
Fascinating.
Go on. So while we're on women's football.
Yes.
Exactly. Again.
Yeah.
So, our next point is obviously women's football at the Asian
Which
Games.
Deloitte kindly is involved with, sponsors the league.
Yeah. So the national team was in the Asian Games in Hangzhou, which is happening right now. And to put it kindly, they didn't have a good outing.
Nope.
Okay.
But they were there. I'll get to that.
Against
Definition
a 3-time Asian Games gold medalist, North Korea. Admittedly, it was a tough ask for them. But they lost 7-0 and they lost 10-0 both matches. We're not gonna criticize the big scores. It is what it is. The gulf is that big, that far. But what's next for women's football after this one? I mean, we did make some inroads in the SEA Games. We had some friendly wins. We had Danielle Tan, who's on her way in a good professional career. What comes next for women's football after this?
So I think there's a couple of things. The first thing I would say is, in spite of the defeats, and North Korea is North Korea, and I know for a lot of football fans they may not comprehend that, but in women's terms that
they beat
means
South Korea in the next quarterfinals.
But the team was sent there to gain experience, and you can argue about whether getting beat is gaining experience or not, but I would say it is.
Of course it is.
They will not. They cannot sit and play Indonesia and draw 1-1 against those teams and play in the WPL where there are basically no foreigners. Ironically, there are in the WNL, but not in the WPL, and get better. And they need this exposure, number one. Number two, going to the SEA Games, going to the Asian Games is actually galvanizing the football community, galvanizing women, because for a long time, these players were saying, what's the point, right?
Yep.
I play for Singapore, but we never get to go to SEA Games for 20 odd years. We never go to Asian Games. And so when a job comes along, when a boyfriend comes along, when a husband comes along, when a life partner, whatever it else comes along, they kind of go, what's the point? I'm playing in a league where no one's watching and that, right? And so there was an important message there to the parents and to the young players is we're gonna invest in this. We're gonna do this, and I think that's a good thing as well. They were unlucky with, I think it was Cambodia, right? Dropped out.
Yes.
Which is interesting because everybody made a big deal of Cambodia finishing 4th at the SEA Games after they spent 6 months in China on a training camp, and that was their home games, right? And they did all that. And then as soon as they have an Asian Games, let's drop out. We're not going to bother showing up. So I think it shows where their focus is. That would have been interesting because I think in that situation, not in Cambodia, against a Cambodia team not so galvanized after SEA Games, I think our ladies probably would have beaten them and got a decent result. They were unlucky. They ended up playing North Korea twice. In terms of where they go from here, so it was a young team. It was actually a very young team. There were a lot of girls in there, 18, 19.
There's some who pull out.
20 years old. There's a couple who are not available right now. You mentioned Danelle. There's a couple playing in the US at universities, and this is difficult timing. I mean, this tournament did not fit to the FIFA window in terms of Danelle. There's 1 or 2 players who, for whatever reasons, injuries and other reasons, are not available right now. So honestly, I would say there's 5 or 6 players that would probably be in the starting lineup that were not even there. But in terms of where they go to next, there's a couple of things that we've fundamentally got to do. We've got to raise the standard of the domestic game, which means we need to get some foreign players into our league, because honestly, the local players, you play the same players every week, and Albirex have brought in some Japanese players. LCS had some good foreigners, but unfortunately they all kind of reached university age or whatever else and have disappeared. Madison Telmer is setting the world alight in the US at the moment, who was at LCS last season. So we've got to raise that that standard, firstly. And then secondly, we've got to make sure that the infrastructure, the ecosystem, the coaching, everything else, they've brought in Kareem to coach the women's team, is the entire structure, even in terms of physios and training pitches, scheduling of training, the balance between club training and international training. Is it all in the right place right now? There is still some work that needs to be done. And the goal is to get the league towards a semi-pro league, to have the girls being paid so that some can focus on football full time. And that some of and ideally if 2 or 3 more clubs can really professionalize the way that LCS has, then I think that would be a good starting point. We will keep sending them to SEA Games and ideally to Asian as much as possible because it's the only way they're going to get experience. But honestly, with women's football, the window is around 2032, 2033. Because they are further behind than the men. They've had some good results at youth team levels, 15, 16, 17, and they've got some good players coming through. The players that are currently in the team, 25, 26 years old, frankly speaking, and a lot of them are good friends of mine, it came a little bit late for them. Arsene Wenger will always tell everyone that if you are not technically where you need to be at 13, 14 years old, you will never make it. A lot of these girls that are in the national team didn't even start playing until they were 17, 18. And I mean kick a ball at that point. So I think we need to persevere and we need to keep investing and just take this as a learning experience that it is. Because I really feel 2032, 2033, these young girls start coming through. If they still had the exposure, if the league's got to where it needs to get to, if we get the right coaches, everything in the right place, we have a genuine shot. And I still maintain World Cup qualification is a way, right?
Yes.
Asian Games qualification is a way. But we should be getting SEA Games podium. And the thing that I think tells the story was the girls were very upset after SEA Games, because they saw their group and they saw that Cambodia game and they said, if we can just beat Cambodia, we're in the semi-final. And that would have been progress. And unfortunately, they didn't get that game. And I can tell you, last SEA Games, they were just so excited to be there in Vietnam. After Cambodia, they were upset. That is a good sign. That is progress.
That is great. And it's great to hear you say that, because I don't think it will take as long as maybe some of our viewers and listeners think. This idea of becoming part of the national psyche. We must continue with women's football. We must continue to invest in women's football. I'll give you a personal anecdote quickly of how fast it can happen. My daughter said to me this weekend, wasn't it a great result for Liverpool? I said, what are you talking about? Liverpool lost. She was talking about the women's game, the Women's Super League. 6 months ago, she'd never even heard of it. But because of the Women's World Cup, she now knows as much about the women's players as she does the men. This happened in a matter of months. That's how quickly the psyche can change. And you can go, oh, that's different. That's an Angmor League. Shanti Pereira. A year ago, most Singaporeans had never heard of Shanti Pereira outside of the track and field bubble and the sports media. Everybody knows Shanti Pereira's name now. And if we persevere with women's football, a SEA Games progress, Asian Games progress, it will happen that quickly. Not years, months. It will happen in a matter of months. We must persevere, because I still happen to believe the women have got greater chance of progressing, being blunt now, at a higher level than the men, because I just think the competitive pool is a little bit smaller and I think the women can progress faster. I think that's what's happened. But anyway, as always, let us know what you think about the women's football in Singapore. What should happen next? Send all your comments to
Yahoo Southeast Asia on YouTube, Yahoo SG, Yahoo_MY on Twitter, Yahoo SEA on TikTok.
As always, James, thanks for coming on. And as always,
wonderful opinions.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to you. We have a sponsor, StarHub.
Yep, StarHub. Sign up for their Premium Plus package. You get 1 year broadband free. 1 year broadband. What a deal.
What a deal. What a deal. Thank you as always. And we'll see you again, same time, same place next week. Take care.